Okay, it's 7 o'clock. We should call the Plan Commission meeting to order. I feel like I'm talking to one person in the room here. Yes.
Need to nominate a new chair, correct? I
Yes,
would like to nominate.
That was my next line.
Sorry. Can I nominate Mr. Turner to be the chairman this evening?
Okay, we have a nomination. Is there a second?
I second that.
Okay, all in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Suppose motion passes. So I get to chair it tonight. Thank you. All right, any changes to the agenda?
If you could declare a quorum and or do a roll call and declare the quorum first, that would be appreciated.
Is that in my notes here? Oh, it's okay. Okay, let's do a roll call. I guess it is.
Mr. Ackerson,
Here.
Ms. Billman, Mr. Fell,
Here.
Mr. Fitch, Mr. Hopkins, Ms. Wadrago,
Here.
Mr. Turner,
Here,
Ms. Yu.
Here.
there is a quorum. Very good. So looking at the agenda, are there any changes to the agenda?
No, there are not.
Okay. We should look at approval of previous minutes. Minutes from the June 7th, 2018 regular Plan Commission meeting are available for approval. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second for the motion?
I
We're going to be quick tonight,
Let her.
can tell.
This is just really.
Are there any corrections or amendments for the minutes?
No.
Okay.
I did not see any.
Let's call for a voice vote. All in favor of approving minutes, please say yes.
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 All opposed, say no. Okay, minutes are approved.
Mr. Chair, before you go on, I will just note for the record that Mr. Hopkins has joined us, and he joined us in time for that vote.
Very good. Thanks. Okay. Communications. No communications. Continued public hearings. And I do need to read the plan case, right? Do I read?
Yes, please.
Okay. So plan case number 2331-T-18. And do I actually read the title of it too? Okay. An application by the Urbana Zoning Administrator to amend the Urbana Zoning Ordinance to modify who may submit an application for various zoning approvals. This case is continued to the September 20th, 2018 Plan Commission meeting upon request of the Zoning Administrator. There is no old business. So we get into new business.
New public hearings, technically.
New public hearings, technically. Thank you. Plan case number 2346-T-18, an application by the Urbana Zoning Administrator to amend the Urbana Zoning Ordinance to combine the Mixed Office Residential, MOR, Development Review Board, and the Design Review Board.
This is Lori Pearson, Zoning Administrator. I will be providing the staff report tonight. If this case sounds a bit familiar to you, is because you had heard it, most of it anyway, at your meeting on April 19th, 2018. However, in doing the final paperwork to send it to council, I realized that I inadvertently had left out some text that I did not mean to leave out, and it was in a completely unrelated section. So just to make sure we are clear on what the amendment is intended to amend, we are bringing it back before you as part of a new public hearing. I will spare you going into all of the details, though, since all of you were at that meeting in which we considered most of these items before. So I will refer you to Exhibit B in your packet memo, which really is the same discussion points from the previous memo in April. And it also takes into account the changes that were made at that April meeting. So just briefly, I will touch on those points for the record. In essence, what we're trying to do here is an administrative change to the text of the zoning ordinance, which would combine the MOR, or the Mixed Office Residential, Development Review Board with our existing Design Review Board and make one individual board. As part of that, there would need to be a recomposition of the membership. What's in your packet and what was considered at the April meeting includes creating one board called the Design Review Board with 7 regular members and 2 alternate members. That breakdown is in your packet. The other changes that we've previously discussed included taking a section that was related to the MOR district that was in a completely different section of the zoning ordinance and actually putting it as a package with this other text so that people didn't forget about it as they were preparing materials that were trying to meet the requirements. Thirdly, we just needed to clean up some language about a chair and a vice chair. And then also we wanted to clean up the process a little bit in that we made people go through the process to find out at the end that the project was exempt. So we're moving that determination earlier in the process so that can be step number 1 so that they don't have to go through a process that is unnecessary. And then finally, there are a number of things that were listed as exempt type projects in the East Urbana Design Review Overlay District, notably single-family residential properties and local historic landmarks and local historic districts. Those never made their way into the text, which means they were not legally binding. So we added those to the text here to make those legally binding. Now, the changes that are new that you had not previously considered are in the main part of your memo. And in essence, those are summarized by basically the section that I had inadvertently left out the first time around was section 8-4, and it was in the parking section. So we put that back in. And then while we're cleaning things up here, we decided we might as well really clean things up. So there was one section that talked about if an application is denied, and if it's resubmitted, that was unclear in the text, so we've cleared that up, and then in doing so made it consistent with how many days it takes to process it with a typical application, a new application. So we made those 2 things consistent. And thirdly, we had a really thorough legal review, so a lot of, extra words are taken out. I'm definitely not going to go through all of those changes, but it doesn't change the content, it just changes how it reads and makes things clearer. So, and clears up some inconsistencies, as you can imagine, happen from time to time. So, those are all of the changes that we are proposing in the MOR, by combining the MOR, Development Review Board, and the Design Review Board. And your options there, of course, are to forward to City Council with a recommendation for approval, recommendation for denial, or make some changes and let us know what else you'd like to see.
Okay, any questions from the Plan Commission for city staff? Okay, so I do need to open a public hearing,
Yes.
right? Okay, so opening a public hearing. This time we'll invite audience members, if there's anyone to speak in favor or against this proposal. Anyone speak in favor? Anyone against? Seeing none, I think we can close the public hearing.
The public input part of the public hearing.
The public input part of the public hearing is closed. Any other additional questions for city staff? I'm going by my script here. Okay. Yes.
I have a question, I maybe should know this because I've been in front of these boards several times. Is there an appeal process? I know that's not part of the case, I'm just curious.
You would think how many times I've read through this that I would have it at the back, right in front of me. But it goes to, I am 99% sure it goes to the Zoning Board of Appeals, but I will verify that before you vote.
Okay, all right. And
Well, there is a process, because that's what we just changed the timing on, right?
The timing change was if the new Design Review Board were to deny a project and the applicant wanted to resubmit a new project, rather than saying, once you submit it, we'll turn around a meeting and hurry up and get it done within 30 days, we instead say, it's just like a new application, let's make it 45 days.
Okay, so it's not really
okay, another question, again, not totally germane to the vote, but we have 2 boards and we're combining them. Is anybody that's currently on the board not on one of these boards? Not on the new board?
No, with the addition of alternates, they would at least have some role. It might be in an alternate role. And to answer your first question, yes, the last section of this whole section is appeals. And yes, it does, any appeal would be heard by the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Any other questions? Time for a motion?
I was just going to make a comment. I like the idea of combining them. We all approved that before, so I'm going to make a motion to approve the plan case 2346T-18.
Okay, very good. Is there a second?
Sure. Second.
There is a motion and a second. Any discussion or comments? Additional discussion or comments? Okay, then we should move for a vote.
Mr. Fell?
Yes.
Mr. Hopkins?
Yes.
Ms. Wadrago?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Yu?
Yes.
Mr. Ackerson?
Yes.
All right, motion is approved. When will this be forwarded to City Council?
August 20th.
Very good. Okay, then moving on to new business. CCZBA dash 8095-AT-18. A request by the Champaign County Zoning Administrator to amend the text of the Champaign County zoning ordinance to add PV solar farm as a new principal use in the county AG-1 and AG-2 districts, subject to certain special use conditions. Very good.
I need to say that I have had discussions of parts of this ordinance unrelated to the aspects that involve Urbana with people in the county informally, but that needs to be said. I do not think they create a conflict or need to recuse.
Very good. And Marcus, you're going to present?
Yes, thank you. Good evening. The Champaign County Zoning Administrator has made a request to amend several sections of the county zoning ordinance to add PV solar farm as a new principal use under the category industrial uses, electric power generating facilities, and also allow that a PV solar farm may be authorized by a county board special use permit in the Ag 1 and Ag 2 agriculture zoning districts. This amendment would allow for the development of large and medium scale photovoltaic or PV solar arrays in the unincorporated areas of Champaign County. The proposed text amendment is of interest to the city of Urbana only to the extent that it will affect zoning and land use development decisions within the city's 1.5 mile extraterritorial jurisdiction. The city has subdivision and land development jurisdiction within that area, while the county holds zoning jurisdiction. So there should be consistency between these two jurisdictions where regulations may overlap. Since development within this area may abut development within the current corporation limits of the city or may eventually be annexed into the city's corporate limits. It is the Plan Commission's responsibility to review the proposed amendment to determine what impact it might have on the city and to recommend to City Council whether or not to protest the proposed text amendment. Under state law, a municipal protest of the proposed amendment would require then 3/4 supermajority of affirmative votes for approval of the request by the county board. Otherwise, a simple majority vote would be required. As far as background goes, there has been an increasing interest in large-scale solar farm developments throughout the state, and there are 7 pending PV solar farm cases on the Champaign County ZBA dock. The Champaign County Environment and Land Use Committee, or ELUC, initially discussed this proposed amendment at its January 4th meeting. After extensive discussion, the CCZBA voted at its June 28th meeting to forward the zoning amendment to ELUC with a recommendation for approval. This final version was introduced for review by ELUC on July 5th, and ELUC will then discuss the item and render their final decision on August 9th after their 30-day review period, and they may forward it to the county board for its August 23rd meeting. So our process here is Plan Commission makes a recommendation to City Council, and our plan is to then have that recommendation available to the Champaign County Board prior to their decision. This memorandum will focus on the potential impacts to the city of Urbana. A typical solar farm, there's 3 types. There's a utility scale solar farm. This is about 40% of the proposed type of facilities. These are usually 20 acres or more in size, and they're strictly for the production of electricity to be sold on the open market. Then community solar farms, which are another 50% of the proposed facilities nationwide, are usually between 5 and 10 acres in size. They may be used for commercial generation or for community use, such as at a university, for a municipality, or some other large land use or land development. And then finally, about 10% of these solar PV facilities are light renewables, and that's typically a private development, somebody's house, somebody's business. Currently, there is no model solar farm ordinance for Illinois communities. There are agencies that provide some recommendations. Champaign County planning staff did review existing solar ordinances from Kankakee, Christian, Fulton, Tazewell, and Whiteside counties. So there is no model ordinance, but they have looked at existing solar farm ordinances. I would say that Champaign County's proposed amendment is a little more thorough than any of the 5 that I reviewed from their research. Currently, the Champaign County zoning ordinance does not address any size of PV solar array. A household-sized private PV solar array requires no permit, not even a building permit. The proposed PV solar farm zoning ordinance amendment is based on the existing Champaign County wind energy farm text in their zoning ordinance. For comparison, the city of Urbana currently has no zoning regulations permitting or regulating principal use, utility, or community scale solar energy systems that would be similar to the PV solar farms that are currently interested in siting in Champaign County. City staff reviewed the proposed text amendment language to determine potential impacts to land within the city's current or extraterritorial area, or for potential impacts to the city's ability to manage or plan for future development. Staff does not anticipate a negative impact to the city or its ability to plan or manage growth or development. The proposed changes that are most relevant to the city of Urbana include, and I'll put these up on the board, adding PV solar farm as a principal use in an Ag 1 or as a second principal use in an Ag 2 district. Either of these would require a county board special use permit. This is a special type of special use permit in the county. They also have a non-county board special use permit that is administratively handled. So this is a special use permit that's bumped up to the level of having the county board review it. Also, there's a section that prohibits locating a PV solar farm in the city's ETJ area except under these conditions. That the PV solar farm is not in the city's contiguous urban growth area, that the applicant has provided the city with a copy of the special use permit application, and if no resolution from the city regarding the special use permit for the proposed solar PV farm is submitted prior to the consideration of the application by the county board, that the county zoning administrator shall provide documentation that the municipality was notified of the meeting dates. This is essentially saying that the city has an opportunity to submit a resolution either in favor or in opposition to the proposed solar farm special use permit. They're not required to submit a resolution. If, though, the city doesn't submit a resolution, the county zoning administrator has to tell the county board that the city had been notified and they had ample opportunity to submit. Most of the conditions, including these 5, may be waived by the county board upon request by the applicant. That's up to the county board to offer, to grant that waiver. By state law, the city has the ability to review zoning decisions within its ETJ for consistency with the city's comprehensive plan. In reviewing the comprehensive plan, several pertinent goals and objectives came up, including preserving natural resources and environmentally sensitive areas in the community, encouraging compact, contiguous, and sustainable growth patterns, ensuring that new land uses are compatible with and enhance the existing community, minimizing incompatible land uses, identifying and addressing issues created by overlapping jurisdictions in the ETJ, promoting Urbana's potential for technology-related businesses, developing a diverse and broad, stable tax base, and providing maximum service and dependable utilities. The proposed zoning text amendment to allow principal use PV solar farm in the county's Ag 1 and Ag 2 zoning districts is generally consistent with these city goals and objectives. It seeks to increase the availability of renewably generated electricity while reducing the negative impacts on existing adjacent residential areas. It also includes measures to protect farmland, natural and cultural resources, and wildlife. Finally, it attempts to expand the county's tax base by adding industrial land uses with significant economic potential. So looking at your screen here, this is in the TAN boundary area. This is the extraterritorial jurisdiction within 1.5 miles of the city. These areas shaded in pink are this contiguous urban growth area. So that is, even though the city has the ability to manage growth within that ETJ, the areas that are in the contiguous urban growth area are more likely to develop in an urban fashion quicker. So the county recognizes that and gave it additional protection by saying that a proposed PV solar farm could not site within the CUGA. Again, that prohibition is waiverable if an applicant were to request a waiver for that prohibition. And this is a little zoom in and a little less busyness. The CUGA runs along Curtis Road, up Cottonwood Road, hits the ETJ boundary, and then hits Olympian Road and jig-jogs across and goes up again on Olympian Road. And so that's the contiguous urban growth area of the city of Urbana. And that came out of the long-range management plan for Champaign County. So impacts to city of Urbana zoning. Within the city's municipal boundaries, the proposed zoning ordinance text amendment does not directly impact the use of land, nor does it impact the city's ability to manage growth and development. It creates a mechanism of prior notification, an opportunity to submit a resolution to the county regarding the proposed special use permit, and creates zones in the city's area of ETJ within which a PV solar farm cannot be located except by special waiver. Staff does not anticipate a negative impact to the city or the city's ability to manage or plan growth or development. The summary of staff findings are included in the staff report, which in conclusion says the proposed text amendment would not pose significant negative impacts to land uses or the ability to plan or manage growth within the city's ETJ. So the Urbana Plan Commission may forward the plan case to the City Council with a recommendation to defeat a resolution of protest, or forward the plan case to City Council with a recommendation to defeat a resolution of protest contingent upon specific provisions to be identified, or forward the plan case to City Council with a recommendation to approve a resolution of protest. Based on the findings that we elucidated, staff recommends that the Plan Commission forward a recommendation to defeat a resolution of protest as presented. That's the end of the staff report.
Very good. Thank you for your report. Are there any questions from Plan Commission?
So I'm not sure what size the UIUC solar farm is. Could you give us an idea of that size and whether something like that could appear within the continuous growth area if somebody submitted a special use permit? I'm just trying to get a handle on what could be permitted if requested, what would be ruled out, if anything, or is it all case by case?
I want to estimate that the UIUC solar farm is around 20 acres. Currently, under the proposed zoning amendment, it would not be permitted to be sited within the contiguous urban growth area unless the applicant submitted a request for a waiver of that. The city then would have an opportunity to submit a resolution, and also in that resolution may express a desire of whether or not they would like to see a facility like that, and that would probably weigh into the county board's decision. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah,
Okay.
it does. Thanks.
So the resolution of protest on a special use permit, does it have any effect on their vote?
Yes.
As it would in normal circumstances? Does it then require them to do 3/4 instead of majority?
Super majority of 3/4, yes, instead of just a simple
Are
majority.
you sure for the special use permit, the
Oh,
proposed text?
Sorry.
Yeah, he's asking about if it's a special use permit, does a resolution actually mean anything?
I don't know.
Okay. The contiguous urban growth area is an entity created by the county and not by the city?
Could you repeat that?
The contiguous urban growth area is, let's call it a line,
Right.
created by the county, not by the city.
That, the land use management areas map was created for the long-range management plan that is a Champaign County Regional Plan Commission report.
Okay.
Prior to my
so-
time, I'm assuming it was done in concert or,
Okay, I
with the
am
city.
unaware of the city having made such a designation. So it hasn't, am I right? Or do we know?
No, you're correct, that is a
Okay.
county designation.
Okay. Dynamics of annexation. If, which I think is unlikely for several reasons, a previously constructed, let's say, utility scale solar farm were annexed to this city, what zoning category would it be annexed as? We do generally a translation table.
it depends on what zoning district it is in the county. So if it was in an Ag 1 or Ag 2 district in the county, it would automatically convert over to an agricultural zoning district in the city.
Okay, that might be something we want to talk about, but anyway, okay.
Other questions?
Yeah. Marcus, in the middle of your presentation, you made mention that the county zoning administrator can waive certain requirements?
Not the zoning administrator.
Somebody can waive certain requirements. What can they waive, and do we care?
My question relates to that, actually.
So let's hear both questions, and then I'll
Well,
try and answer.
That was mine.
Okay.
So the waiver was sort of like a subset of my question. I'm trying to formulate a question about whether this favors the large scale over the small to mid-size solar farms, which are usually the community type solar farms, which are more conducive to energy cost savings for residents. Not necessarily large scale would do that. And the waiver that an industrial or a large scale project applicant would be asking for would be in regards to those requirements. And I guess I'm just trying to figure out if there is a way, because I think that commercial applicants would be quicker on the draw for some of the land and some of the projects. And I just wonder if you think that this is favoring the large-scale industrial or privatized, even like if the project were to be flipped and then sold to municipal or to citizen energy users. And if we could have that kind of discussion and see.
Right. So the proposed zoning text amendment addresses both community scale and utility scale. The standards are the same, except that a utility scale proposal requires a noise analysis study. And
What's that stand for?
Pardon?
What's that stand for?
The noise?
Oh, it's not an acronym.
No, it's
It means noise.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Whereas a community scale development isn't required to submit one, but the board can require it as part of the application. It isn't required by the ordinance, but it allows the board to put additional requirements on, and if they wanted to add a noise study, they could. So I don't think it favors any. I think the standards throughout are pretty strict about separation, visual screening, fencing, lots of stuff that I would have never considered might be necessary. So I think, but I don't think it favors large scale over medium scale. And
Not even with the unincorporated areas of Champaign County being more, there was a third, I think it was your third slide, the last bullet point. One before that.
Okay.
The one before. Would allow for the development of large and medium-scale solar arrays in unincorporated areas of Champaign County.
Right.
I guess that's pretty general.
It's just that it's not addressing residential scale, single private arrays. It's for medium and large scale. And, the county nor anybody else can do anything about the ability for a developer, a large-scale developer, being able to put money together or, do a design better, quicker, faster than a smaller scale one. But there is certainly a lot of land out there that's available for development. If a large scale wants to put one in, a small scale can as well. Now, one thing is that the large scales have to be near an existing electrical substation, and the medium scale ones don't. So that gives them some
advantage.
too many things. Sorry.
I feel like it wouldn't, like what we would be paying dearly for would be just on the case-by-case decisions, and if there would be some sort of text that could alert every time for us to consider when we're making the case-by-case decisions, but I don't really know I would put that to the more senior members to think about, and
Well, anytime a special use permit would come up, it would be, the applicant would be required to submit a copy of that to the city, and the city would have the opportunity to submit a resolution. So we would certainly know, when the applications come in.
To answer the previous questions, I did not believe that a protest from the city for the special use permit would trigger any special vote, and I did not see that in my review as I was going through here. So I don't believe it's in there. The second question about the waivers, it's my understanding that how that is dealt with is considered, they use the term waiver, but I don't see that opportunity here. It would be a variance that they would need to apply for, and the county board is the body that grants those. So at the same time as a special use permit, oftentimes the county also considers variances. It's one big package, so they would come forward with a special use permit with variance to allow it to be within the contiguous urban growth boundary.
And as lenient as the variance process is, it's also balanced by the fact that even though it might say a separation distance of 500 feet, it also says the county board has the authority to require a larger separation distance. So there are standards, but then they can be varied from both more leniently or more strictly. So it's very flexible for the county's administration of it.
Other questions? Okay. This time I'll open for public input. Is there any public input for or against? Seeing none, I will close the public input and open for discussion from Plan Commission. Discussion or motion? Does anyone want to present a motion? Discussion, Lou?
I wonder if do we have to make a decision today? I don't mean to slow things down, but
Marcus can speak on the real specifics, but one option that's also available to you is to make a recommendation that's conditional. So, for instance, you could say, well, we recommend that the city council not protest if the text is changed to do X, Y, or Z. But Marcus, I think there's a pretty tight schedule, and county board is coming right up, and we need to get this to city council to have an opportunity to protest.
Isn't there a county, I forget who it is, it's not the county board, but somebody else at the county's looking at this tonight as well, are they not?
That is the ELUC, the Environmental Land Use Committee. So this scheduled city council meeting is the last one that meets before their county board meets. So Plan Commission, if at all possible, should render a decision, even if there are contingencies on it, so that staff can address them prior to that city council meeting, so that the board can have your input as well as city council's input.
So, I guess a way to start is to go through a set of questions to make sure I understand where we are. If it's within the ETJ, it's a special use, and we have the opportunity to file a resolution of protest. It's not clear to me that it's called a resolution of protest in the text. You've been describing it as a resolution.
They would also accept resolutions of support.
Okay, I might prefer that it be worded consistently with the way we deal with all other resolutions, which is to defeat a resolution of protest. The question is really, what effect do we have by making any comments or whatever? And when we do a resolution of protest, it has an effect on the vote. And as I understand it, if it's within the ETJ, I'll come back to the contiguous area, it requires a special use permit. Yeah? Okay.
Any solar farm in the
In the
unincorporated...
county.
In the county would require a county board special use
Okay.
permit.
All right.
If it's in the ETJ, it can't be there unless they give a copy of the application
Yeah,
to the
okay.
city.
All right.
The city has the opportunity to submit a resolution,
Okay.
et cetera.
So the action on that special use permit, when we do have the opportunity, is consistent with what happens on all the other things where we do a resolution of protest, that it actually goes to the county board. It's not some committee or commission below that, it goes to the county board. If we have an effect on the vote when we do a resolution of protest on everything else, we should have an effect on the vote when we do a resolution of protest on this.
I think the
And-
difference in this case is that the things that our resolution, your resolutions, the city's resolutions of protest have an impact on shifting from simple majority to supermajority, that's a particular subset of zoning actions. Okay.
So part of my question is whether we have that authority elsewhere based on a county ordinance, state legislation, a city-county agreement. I don't know.
Right. I'm not sure where that
But
comes
if
from.
we can do that, that is, if we could either persuade the county to adopt that as part of its ordinance, or if we can interpret state legislation to apply to this as well as the other, which I doubt, or at least that could be more complicated. I think one possibility is to turn the resolution into a, let's call it, a standard resolution of protest for a county action in the ETJ.
What if the city was interested in there being a solar farm there?
Then we defeat a resolution of protest and we say, this is great.
Okay,
which
would
is
it have an impact on the level of their vote to
No.
be different from just a simple majority?
No, I mean, well, let me see. My understanding of how it works, normally, forget this, when we do a resolution of protest, generally, we defeat them, all right? So that has no effect on the vote by the county. And sometimes when we defeat them, we say, rah, rah, you know, this is not only, we're not going to defeat it, but, I mean, we're going to defeat it, and not only that, but we're going to say, yeah, we actually like this. But if we do pass if we don't defeat a resolution of protest, it is, if we don't recommend to the city council, in any case, the wording is wonderful. The county board has to do a supermajority, and I don't remember what supermajority is required, but some supermajority. And so I think it would be sort of consistent and simpler if it worked the same way all the time, and if we really knew when we passed a resolution that it had some effect, that they had to take us seriously.
So if I'm understanding what you're perhaps suggesting, please correct me, is that perhaps this text could include a provision that would trigger the supermajority vote should a municipality submit a resolution of protest. And if that's what you're suggesting, I can certainly talk to our legal to make sure that that's something we can actually, that the county level can actually do that.
Yeah, and if, right, that's exactly what I'm trying to get at, including your legal check.
Can I just clarify, why wouldn't it trigger that at this point, just to clarify?
So the law, and I believe it's state law, but I'm not 100% sure, but the law as it stands today is that the municipalities have an opportunity to submit a resolution of protest only in two types of zoning county zoning cases, those being rezonings, so changes of the zoning map, and changes of the county zoning text amendment. So those are the only two types of cases. Previous years, decades past, resolutions have been submitted for special use permits, for instance, but I have no idea if that triggered anything or if it was just the city making a statement.
Thank you.
So a second thing is the contiguous urban growth area, which I do find it intriguing that the county has set this up, not the city. But that means that they can't do anything at all except under special circumstances, or what? I can't keep track of all these things.
So the difference between being just in the ETJ or being in the contiguous urban growth area is that in the ETJ only, they simply need to do that notification process, and the city has the opportunity to submit a resolution in favor or against. If it's in the CUGA, which is presumably a larger impact to the municipality, which the county is trying to guard against, they're not permitting any solar farm within that closer area, regardless of notifying or
Okay.
anything.
All right. And there's no waivers or exceptions?
No,
Yeah,
they can
okay.
still, the applicant can request a waiver, a variance of that special condition.
Of the county, so we'd be back with a protest. So
Yeah, if
we
you,
would be, if they request the waiver, then we're back to the standards. If they succeed in requesting the waiver, we're back to the procedure that applies anywhere in the ETJ.
I would assume so, because I see that CUGA as a subset.
Yeah.
So everything that happened within the larger area would still
Right.
apply.
Though it's an interesting phenomenon, if they create it, because the ETJ is a dynamic phenomenon,
Yes, it is.
and we don't apparently have control over the CUJ. It's not ours, it's theirs. So I find it I don't think we gain much by pretending to rely on that. I don't think it tells us anything. It tells them something because they create it. So if we wanted greater protections of some kind, I think we should create, they should be based on, for example, a map of areas or zoning criteria or urban service area or something that's under our control, not their control.
I will say that this was the first time I'd heard of the contiguous urban growth area. But that's not to say that when this was created, I think in 2009, it's quite possible that they might have, actually, I've got a picture of it, that they worked with the city or consulted with the city. I'm not going to say
So
either.
if you're
either way.
surprised that you've never heard of it before?
I've only been here a year and a half.
Yeah,
now, so-
well, try 46. And I don't remember ever hearing of it before either.
So this came from Champaign County's Land and Resource Management Plan.
Yeah, I'm aware of the plan, but I don't
2010.
remember ever dealing with it here. And it may not be all that important, it's just a surprise that this item is in the ordinance, and I don't think we should rely on it. I'm not sure what we can do about it.
Can we,
Yeah.
can we make some motion that references this specific map? And changes, I don't know, if they change the map, it's irrelevant to our decision? We always use that map?
Well, or any changes in the map have to be, approved by Urbana City Plan. Any changes to the contiguous urban growth area have to come before the Urbana Plan Commission. I mean, if it's a,
But is that something we can tie to this vote, or is that a separate, whole separate thing? I mean, I don't know, I'm just,
yeah, well, I think we can tie two kinds of things to our motion. One is, we want text changes, that is, our resolution, say, to defeat a resolution of protest is contingent on these specific text changes. We use text amendment. We can also say, we think these things ought to be addressed in the future. Maybe that's what this is because if, it sounds like a not unreasonable idea if the county and the city talked about continuous urban growth area. And it's close to the urban service area boundary of sanitary district, but it's not, at least the best memory of mine, it's not identical to that. But I guess with because you've got to check the legal, I don't know how we do a contingent resolution on that either, but that would be my proposal.
You can find a way. You can put it in there and then, with the caveat that assuming that it's legally permissible or something.
Pending
So-
review by legal, city legal.
We'll figure it out.
So I hate writing resolutions in real time, but I think we gotta go. So I'll make a motion that, what's the case number? That we send, CCZBA 895 AT18 to City Council with a recommendation to defeat a resolution of protest contingent on clarifying that the resolution in response to special use permits by the county board follow the procedures of resolutions of protest, including the effect requiring a supermajority vote by the county board.
Terry, you have all that?
Don't ask me to repeat
Good point,
it, because I
good point.
have no idea. Yeah, did you get most of that down?
Yes, just for clarification, you said that the resolution should be clarified, or it should be clarified. It is-
That's probably not a good wording.
That's not what I heard the intent from your discussion, so I was
Right.
wondering if
Well,
required.
What I want, yes, required to
Required.
follow the and then I think the other questions could be sort of legislative record of discussion that we've talked about, the contiguous urban growth area, annexation, translation, and maybe some of the other questions that, but I'm not seeing those as part of the council's resolution text.
Lori, do you want to read?
I
Read
think
that
this
again.
is one that we're going to have to go off of
Okay,
intent.
sounds good.
And we might add a few other things before it goes to city council anyway, understanding the intent of this discussion, but we're still needing a second on that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll make a second, with just an aside. I'll make a second. I am concerned about the continuous urban growth area, but I don't think it belongs in this motion. I think it's more communication.
Right.
That any discussion or drawing of lines differently implicitly should be done as a joint effort or with input from the city to the Regional Planning Commission. They may have done that already, and we just aren't aware of it because it doesn't come up. But when I'm thinking specifically about this issue with solar farms, they're saying they're not going to put them here, but they could give a variance. And if they give a variance and we don't like it, that might not be a good thing. So I don't think it belongs in the motion, though. So I'm supporting your motion, but I'm just, because you're talking about intent, I'm thinking this is like another communication or something from.
So we have the initial motion, it's been seconded. And then would it just be discussion on intent, or would we make a separate motion after dealing with this?
I mean, you can. I will say that these types of cases, we're not bound to the same kind of strict, this isn't a public hearing. And what we can do what we do when we package things for city councils, we generally say, the Plan Commission did X, and they recommend this, and staff concurs. So what we could do is, say, Plan Commission recommended this very specific thing and also had a discussion about that. As a result of that discussion, staff also recommends this contingency or something like that.
Okay, good. Great. Any other discussion on the motion? Okay, let's call for a vote.
Mr. Hopkins? Ms. Drago?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Yu?
Yes.
Mr. Ackerson?
Yes.
And Mr. Phil?
Yes.
Okay, motion is approved. And Lori has it.
August 20th, which is, I
August
think,
20th.
3 days before the county board meeting scheduled for it, so.
Very good. Moving on to audience participation. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak about anything not related to the cases on the agenda? Would you like to? Okay, just observing, perfect. Is there a staff report?
I normally report on how City Council voted on previous cases that you've considered. The last case was from your June meeting, June meeting. And that was and also a Champaign County zoning request. It was for rezoning on Cunningham Avenue. You recommended that City Council defeat that resolution of protest, and they defeated that resolution of protest.
Okay, thank you. There's no study session for this meeting, so we'll adjourn.